Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to do here to sketch this out. I'm going to bring my water line down somewhere in this area here because I don't want it to be dead center, and it's too close to the center right now. So my water line is going to come across about here. So it's about little more than a third of the way up from the bottom. Okay, and we have a figure that's over here that I'm going to put in, so it's going to be sort of right in this area here. For this, I'm going to just basically sketch him in. Looks like he's reaching with his line out this way, and we'll sketch him in. Let's bring him in here like so. Bring his hat up. Face. Let's do it. Now we're going to do this a bit so his swing is this way. He's moving in this direction. So most of this is down here. And he's got waders on, and he's moving, sort of pushing his way in that direction. So he's sort of leaning into the painting. He's leaning into the center. Okay, so we've got sort of something like this going on here, and he's standing in the water, and his shoulders are down this way, coming out, and then his arm is coming up over this way. All right, and he's got this other arm back here. Okay, so he's holding a fishing rod, right? Oh, okay. So it sort of looks like he's holding a spinning rod. But anyway, he's got this sort of whip line going across, something like that. All right, so we'll clean that up in a bit, just make sure that that's done. And all of this is going to be roughly, this is all going to be a little bit of sky over here, a lot of trees in this area here, a lot of stuff coming down over here. And again, I'm gonna fix him so he's a little bit better, because this is going this way like this, so he'll be more active. He's actually coming down, and his leg is really going back this way a little bit, so the butt side of him is coming down this way here, and his leg is moving up, and waders are pretty heavy. Right, so he's in the water, and if we follow what I'm actually seeing here, his cap is down this way, and his face is out more like this. So we're dealing with the back side of his head. All right, and yep. Okay, so he's pointing into the center. Now, normally that's not going to be too much of a problem, because his line is going to swing sort of something like this. And he's got suspenders on the waders. So just give him a little bit of character. And so that's basically what that is. And we're going to come in here, and we got all kinds of just different trees over here. This is going to be the toughest part to do right here, is this guy. We're going to put, let's just put a couple of rocks over here on the shore, way back here, just to help it out a little bit. And maybe a tree. I know it's not in the photograph, but we'll put maybe a bigger tree over here, coming up, and I don't know, Maybe one back here, we'll see. Something, we'll do something. A couple of little small trees in this area here. And the water, got light, it's light in this area. It's coming down. Maybe a couple of rocks, I don't know, we'll see what happens. But that's the general overall feel of it. Okay, so we're going to get started here by just we're going to start to take a look at wetting the paper over here. All of this back area, I think, is going to be pretty much all the nice bright colors that we need to deal with. And so I'm going to wet it. I'm going to wet around the rocks back here. And I'm going to actually probably take out some light, certain areas here, and remove some of the wetness. I'll come in here to the water. We want to make sure that we paint around our figure here. Just going to want to just make sure that we're wetting around him. And if we're going to wet around him. So what we're going to do is really flow water in here. So I want a couple of things that I want to do. I want to remove the water here on the rock. And I'm going to remove the water in some of the leafy areas that we're seeing through. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here and do this. And I'm going to remove the water right here in this tree area. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring in my sky area, which is going to be basically nice and light. We'll use a little bit of cobalt blue to do that. And I'm painting right over everything here because well, I already stopped, but because we're going to see through some of these trees, maybe to the sky, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference anyway. So I just have this light tonal value of cobalt blue in the background. And in terms of what I had originally mentioned to you, I'm going to paint this dark. This is going to be painted dark over light anyway. However, I'm going to try something. I want to just remove the water from that tree right there and this tree right here, because I'm probably going to actually try to see if I can get that to be a birch tree. Give it a shot, see what happens. Worst case scenario is if it doesn't work out, we'll just paint over it. All right, so we're now going to put in, with this stuff soaking in here, we're now going to put in some of my value that I want. And I'm going to start with yellow ochre because, and what I'm going to do now is get a little bit more consistency in my pigment. Not as wet. All right, so my yellow ochre is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to take and remove the water from the brush to dampen the brush, pick up more pigment than water. And to start to get this feeling, we're just going to start to put in some tonal values. And because it is fall, I'm actually going to put in a little bit more interesting oranges. So I'm using my cadmium orange a little bit here too as well. So we're going to come in here with cadmium orange. Now I'm putting it in a little bit more pigment in this than I would normally put in or let me just say this, because this is all wet, if I put a lot of water in here, it will just spread all over the place. But I want to contain it. I want to make sure that it's held within a certain area. So I'm adding more pigment on it, a little bit thicker pigment than I am, that I would normally. Usually I'd spread this all the way around, but if I want to hold on to this, and I want the tree lines, and I want all of this beautiful tree structure that's over here to be part of this process, I want to make sure that this is more pigment now that's in here. So I'm going to come in here and add more pigment than water in these areas, and I'm sort of watching out for where I want to leave the birches. Okay, and we're going to just come in here with a little bit more red, a little bit more pigment. Take the water out of the brush, make it colorful. Okay, a little bit more there, a little bit more here. A lot of color in these trees that are out there. And then I'm going to end up coming over here, and I'm going to actually come in and just add a little bit more condensed value of yellow ochre. But I also want to increase it a little bit by adding some of the green that's there, because there's a lot of, you'll notice that there's a lot of, if I take this over here, there's still a lot of green that's mixed into this stuff over here. And what I'm really doing is I'm taking paint, you can see it here, all right? I'm just sort of mixing different, I'm leaving it on the palette, but just mixing in with it, in some of the tonal values, the colors. So adding a little bit of cerulean blue to this yellow, I can pick up some of the green, and I can come in here and say, okay, let's do something like this, and perhaps maybe something like this, which is all I'm really doing here. And we have a greenish, we have green stuff, or green trees down in this area here, and I'm carefully trying to go around my figure because I want to keep him white, the white of the paper if I can help it. Okay, so we've gone around him at the top there and at the bottom. Got some nice darks down there. We're going to end up with some even darker reds down here, a little bit more too. And we got some beautiful oranges that we're going to deal with. So let's go back to getting this nice, bright, super brilliant orange values, orange colors, but I'm trying to make it a good value too, nice strong stuff. Okay, around the rocks, we've got a thin tree there. And again, if it doesn't work out, you can always paint over it. But what I'm really trying to do is to get a lot of color back in here, and leave some of the sky over there as well. And this is all forest, right? It's all forest, so we're not going to see too much on the way of sky up there, are we? We shouldn't. Nice reds. Introduce some nice strong reds over here. I'm forcing the colors a little bit more than is on the image, but I think we need to do that. And I want that nice bright stuff to stay out there. I want it really strong. I want to just be a little of impact. So here we go. We wet the paper. And we got all this wonderful stuff going on over here. This is my shoreline. Okay, and a couple of rocks over there. And not sure if we have a mist. Oh, we could put a mist in here. This is very interesting. Let's just soften this up here. Let's soften that up a bit. Let's get a little bit of this in here. Make some green in there. So with our colors that are in there now, we've got a nice massive color, nice feeling over there in the background. Now we can start to take a look at letting this dry a bit and maybe pulling some, because it's a little bit too wet, because I got some stuff in here, but we can start to pull in some more definition in terms of the trees here. For instance, I can add a few dots here and there. It's still a little bit too wet. But I want to give you an indication of trees. So we just don't want we could use just the blotches. I shouldn't say that we don't want them. But what we do want to do is to create the illusion probably of more of a tree line over here. So we need to put in some trunks of saplings that are across the river. And we'll do that by just taking water and clearing it out. Maybe bring one down here. Let's take a little bit of water and put it on the brush. And I'm just using the back side of this brush and feathering some in. I'm adding water to it. Is what I'm doing. So when I add water to this is some of this area is drier. If I add water to it, what should end up happening is on those dry areas, I should start to get a slight blossom as I trail this water in. But it's going to be controlled, because what's going to end up happening is it's going to follow the path of the water. So what we want to do is to make sure that we have some lights and some darks on these tree branches that are back there. So I'm using this big brush right now. To create what I'm actually creating is, again, just blossoms that are in line. Right. Slight blossoms, and we can probably even go back and pick out, if I get a smaller brush, let's take a look at getting a smaller brush in here. How about this angle? Let's see if we can do it with this angle brush. And I'll wet the angle brush. Here's the angle brush right here. And I'm just going back in here with just straight water. Okay, adding water, creating a little bit of a blossom here and there. All right, and maybe we'll do one here too. So it's just, it's light, it's light, it's slight. It's not meant to be anything other than that light, slight look. And we're going to end up, I'm going to get a bigger brush now to do this, but because we got those darks in there. Let me go back and get my large brush here, my large. So my water, if I leave a trail, my water is going to be on the bluish side, but it's going to have some definite warmth to it in certain areas. What I'm doing is I'm trying to leave a little bit of a light edge back there, because I want it to be brighter, sparkly. And it's fall, winter time, so it's not warm. The water's going to be a bit more on the cooler side. Cool blue. So we'll do it. We'll be doing this sort of cool gray. Blue. And I'm just simply mixing a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of my cerulean blue together, and maybe you're mixing it into this yellow area, so I'm really creating neutrals, because I've got blues and yellows and reds in here, which you're going to create because they're called complementary and neutral. And I'm doing this very lightly. If you can see what I'm doing here, I'm just doing it extremely with a light touch. And as I come across here, I'm going to get greener, because we want to reflect some of what's happening. We want to reflect some of what's happening in the background as the water picks up some of the tonal values and stuff that's going on back here. Okay, so and you notice essentially what I'm doing here is I'm also keeping my brush on the vertical side instead of horizontal to help with the reflections. And I'm doing it wet into wet. This was a little different up here. This was more damp, a lot of pigment. So this is my water and my reflections. And I want to come in and now make some darker branches and trees and so forth, trunks of trees. So I'm moving toward picking up a little bit of alizarin crimson here with my French ultramarine blue to create a nice dark. And we're going to start to sort of put in some tree trunks. Here and there. Again, just actually what I'm going to do is use I'm going to use my rigger to do some of this stuff. My little round brushes, or not my rigger, I won't even use my rigger yet. I'll just use this little round brush rather than a straight brush. Okay, and what I want now is, I don't want it to really spread all over the place. I just want a little bit more pigment than water. So what I'm going to do is dry my palette out a little bit. Pick up my palette because it's wet all over the place. And come in here with a little bit of French ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt sienna. As you know, I combine those two to make my darks. Burnt sienna is kind of good. And then just to add a little bit of touch of alizarin crimson to this. Okay. So, this is mostly pigment. And I'm going to start to do some just interesting shapes. On the other side of this, on the bank, off the bank. So I'm just indicating some of the tree structure that's over here. And I think what I'm going to do also, well, maybe not. I got enough value in there. I think I need a little bit more value in some of these areas, a little darker, a little denser. Pick up a little bit of alizarin crimson, add a little bit of strong alizarin crimson with my French ultramarine blue, and start to look at some of the darks that are in the area here before I even do some of this stuff. Touching, or I should say putting in some darks here and there. So, to indicate some of the foliage that's back here, the little dark areas. All right. I'm going to create so what we're actually doing is we're putting in more value back here. a little stronger, a little deeper value. All right, so using some, right now coming in here and using some yellow ochre and my cerulean blue, but not wet. This is almost, it's not quite dry. It's damp. But we want these to be, I want to make this a little bit, it actually makes this whole area, I think, a little darker right here. All right, so when we look at this thing, we have a just nice feel, an overall feel with value in here, of dark areas and light areas. And now we can come in here and put in a few more branches. And we want that to come down there. And we have maybe some darks between these trees here, coming right out of the rocks there. And what I might have to do here is, because I don't think I can pull that out. I'm not sure, but I can try it, but I may have to use some white paint to get this fine thin line over here of his fishing line that's out there. Notice that I got some paint in here that I didn't want. I'm going to make these darker anyway, so this is not too much of a problem. So what I'm doing is I'm actually coming in here and putting in this guy's pants. A little bit too early for this, I think. Weight is, it's still too feathery. It's all right. And he's got a blue. We're gonna wait on that a little bit. Just had some dots in here, see, stuff like this. Okay, so let's take a look at some of those that I did out there, the trees lines, we're going to put some fine stuff in there later. But let's take a look at the rock that's out here, okay? Let's leave the top white and wash in a tone, a light tone. Just this is a neutral color. We'll leave the top white. Okay, and then we're going to end up washing in another little bit of a different tone here, but we're keeping these lighter, not as deep a value as what's happening over here. And I'm just using a variety of mixed colors on my palette to do this. Okay, just whatever's here. Doesn't make any difference what it is. As long as we keep some spacing in here to create the illusion of some rocks out in that area there. We'll put in some over here as well, but I just don't want to do it right now. Maybe we have a couple of other things that are going on over here. Okay, and we'll put in some brush and bushes, and we'll create some interesting things. But this is going to be, that's going to be my, I'm going to leave that white for now. I'll just put that in a little while. I do want to create a slight skipping if I can do it. Let's see if this is, still a little bit too wet. Let's get my cool colors. Mixing in with my greens. I'm going to create some neutrals over here. All right. Put a little bit of value in there, just drop it down. Okay, we got a beautiful creek going on over there, and it's getting, it probably would get a little darker down here. Let's use a bigger brush to do that with. Just want to create the illusion of a lake, of a stream, I guess is. Alright, so we'll let that dry. We've got this pretty much where we want to go with it. And we'll add some accents here and there. For instance, if we give our guy a red hat, and I'm going to put this in here right now. What we also want to do is leave a little bit of lightness on the brim. Okay. A little darker here. Okay. And probably a little dark over here. And we'll create got a dark shirt on. So we're carefully painting this. And maybe just a little bit lighter up at the top of his shoulders where the sun is hitting it. Okay. We'll fix that bottom guy a little bit more. Gonna let that dry a bit. And give him a little bit more interest or character. A little bit cobalt blue here. And again, I may have to go back here and use a little bit of, I'm not sure, may have to go back and use a little bit of white to where I lost some of the edging, because you know I like to keep this as transparent as possible. But sometimes what ends up happening is that it just doesn't work out. So let's take a look at maybe a little bit of this value here. He seems to have an orange shirt on, but again, I've got to, so that I can have, so there's a difference between the background which is all going on here. I don't want to necessarily bleed that in to the background. I'm going to leave a little bit of white right there. Okay. Make it a little bit redder. All right. And we'll put in a little bit of his hand. And a little bit of tone, which is a little bit of this and this. What I'm doing is I'm actually mixing up a little bit of Naples yellow with a little bit of opera. For the face. Okay. So the basics are in. It's still a little bit on the loose side. You can see what ends up happening. So we're going to end up, we'll fix that once it dries. But we've got them in there anyway. And so we have to wait until all of this sort of dries down pretty much so that I can get a better feeling of my birch trees. So I'm taking a little bit of dark. The mixture is actually a little bit of my French ultramarine blue along with my burnt sienna and a bit of alizarin crimson. Okay, and just to create a couple of interesting birch. And maybe the same thing's going to happen here. But the white, see, that's not going to work as well back there. But this is going to work fine over here because this is nice and light. And you're working the dark against. You're working the dark of the birch tree against the white of the birch. The dark of the birch tree markings, I guess, against the white of the actual tree itself. To create some fauna back here. A few areas, but this is a little bit wetter than this, so I'm running into some issues, but that's okay. We're just going to use enough dark in here to make the statement. We don't want too much. What we want to do is to create the suggestion, I guess is what I'm asking for, is the illusion of the suggestion of stuff going on back here. Grass. weeds. And with the rock, we want to create a little bit darker area, let's say right in here. To differentiate that one, a little bit of dark area here. Couple back here. A little bit of a dark area here and along the front of this. And we're going to take water. Here, show you what I'm going to do. Take water and let it go in. Take a little bit of water and let it create some. What we're actually doing is we're creating some shadows on these rocks. So they have a tendency to be a little bit more interesting with some shadow on them. Nice bright feel. This is not dead center. He's the center of attention. Got a little bit of birch stuff going on over here. And now we can go ahead and we can start to put in some, should be dark enough so that we can actually end up putting in some varying, let's see if this holds, colors. I'm using Naples yellow here in some of the areas that are dark, because it's more opaque. Dot here, dot there. Now, I can also use, and also come in here and I can use a little bit of lavender. We'll just have to see if it takes. To help punch it up a bit. Some darks. Now we need to make a little bit of a shadowed area on the arm of this guy, because this area here is in shadow and it's still a little bit too wet, so we're going to have to wait a bit. It's all too wet, but in the meantime, I don't know if I can pull this out or not. We're going to try. Let's get some water. I'm going to try and do this. Let's see. Well, we may be able to do it. So let's see. What I'm doing is I'm trying to create. I know this is a thin line, theoretically speaking. I'm trying to create this sort of whipping effect that happens when you it's probably a little bit too thick, but maybe we can fill it in a bit. I don't know. We may be able to do it. Let's see. And if you go fast with this, usually it works better. I'm thickening it up. Don't want to thicken it up. So we may just end up having to do, well, it's not too bad, actually. Let it dry a bit. Now we'll just let it dry and we'll see where it goes. Yeah, I'm gonna let all of that dry. Okay, so we're at the point right now where we just have to let it dry, and then I'll put in the calligraphy at the end. It looks it's pretty good. So while I'm letting this dry, what I'm doing, while I'm letting all of this stuff dry over here, what I'm doing is I'm just sort of putting in some buds, I guess, if you can call them, leaf structure, whatever, on these trees and branches that I got going. To help the background a little bit more. And I think that's dry enough. Hopefully, let's see if I can drag this across. Might be dry enough. What I'm doing actually is trying to create some highlights. The glistening of the water. Well, I'm not sure that's right. I have to just, let's see if we can lift this. Let it dry a little bit more. Okay, so I wonder if this is just done. Let me see if this is good enough now for me to get some sharp edges over here. Let's see. Take that out. Remove some of this. Remove. Okay. I think we're okay. I think we're good. I think I'm going to end up editing this thing out a little bit here and there, but I think for the most part we're pretty good. Just need to get another small brush in here, small round brush. I need to take out some light. And put in a few more little darks. Pigment only. Soften this up a bit. And I'm going to darken this up down here a bit more. Okay. want to get it too busy. Good. I don't want to get it too busy, and I don't want that line in there. Okay. I think we are in good stead. We will let it go, and I will be back just to say yay and nay on this piece. So thank you. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I looked at it. It's pretty good. Looks fine. I don't think we need too much more to go on. I just wanted to keep this light over here and it's all dark. That's enough so that this is the central of attention, the center of attention. Okay, so there's our fall scene. Lots of splashy colors, a little bit of reflection in the water. I've decided to add a couple of little small things here. A little bit more reflection in the water from some of the stuff that's going on in the background. To pop this out, and I need some strength in that too. It's not much, but I think I need to get just a little bit stronger value in here. And make some of this stuff a little darker here. Get some of that reflection in the back. Some of that reflection in the back areas. I gotta be careful because I can overwork this real quick. Okay. A little bit more chop to the water, I think, is what just was too smooth. All right, let's see how that goes. Just enough. I think that's enough. Have a great day. Bye-bye.